So here's the book I wrote, UFOs over Colorado. I dug real deep into various UFO organizations, contacted a bunch of UFO researchers, got some original cases of my own. And let's just start digging into what I think are the top 20 Colorado cases. And so for case number 3, I chose what is the first widely publicized animal mutilation case, as far as I know. And this is the mutilation of Lady the horse. Most of the earlier reports called it Snippy. That turns out to be a mistake. Snippy was Lady's son. The actual horse's name was Mutilation, or was Lady. And this case occurred on September 8th, 1967, in a ranch very near Mount Blanca and the Great Sand Dunes. The owners of the horse were Burl and Nellie Lewis, but they kept their horse on a ranch owned by Harry King. And according to Harry King, he often saw UFOs near his ranch, which was located right here near the Great Sand Dunes. And immediately prior to this incident, he saw UFOs, very low level. In fact, he saw a craft about 150 feet above him and 150 feet away from his car. The object stopped, or he stopped his car and the object stopped, and it followed him for a mile before suddenly zooming off. And it was not longer after that, on the morning of September 8th, 1967, that he discovered one of the horses that he had on his ranch, Lady, was missing. And he went to search for Lady and found her. There were no tracks around her. He found her original tracks with a bunch of other horses who had apparently been spooked. This small group of horses was running together at high speed, and Lady's tracks veered away from the group and then suddenly ended. And this was just a few hundred yards away from where they actually found her body. And like many of these animal mutilation cases, the flesh had been stripped from her head. The sex organs had been cored out. There was no blood. There was some very unusual things about this case. About 40 feet away, there was a smashed bush. There were 8 strange circular depressions on the ground. Many strange things about this particular sighting. You can see Nellie and Burl Lewis here on the right and other investigators. No tracks were found surrounding this incident, and became very widely publicized. They called in police investigators who were skeptical and did not want to get involved. But one guy, Dwayne Martin from the Forestry Service, agreed to investigate, and he brought a Geiger counter and confirmed that radiation levels in this area were well beyond normal. This did catch the attention of reporters who called the horse Snippy and tried to explain away this sighting, but were unable to do so. This account appeared in many UFO books. And at some point, a researcher by the name of Dr. John Altshuler came in. He was a professor of medicine and pathology at the University of Colorado Health Sciences. And he went to investigate the carcass and was shocked by the wounds. And examining the edges, he concluded that the cuts had been done by some type of surgical cauterizing blade. And it was years later when lasers became available to the public for surgery, and he was struck by the similarity of these wounds. And he says, and I'm quoting, "Most amazing was the lack of blood. I have done hundreds of autopsies. You can't cut into a body without getting some blood, but there was no blood on the skin or on the ground, no blood anywhere. That impressed me the most. How do you get the heart out without any blood?" So he knew that there was a bunch of UFO sightings in this area, and so he decided to stay up late and investigate himself. And around 2 to 3 a.m., he was out by the great sand dunes when he saw UFOs. As he says, and I quote, "I saw 3 very bright white lights moving together slowly below the Sangre de Cristo mountaintops. At one point, I thought they were coming towards me because they got bigger. Then suddenly they shot up and disappeared." As he says, "I was unbelievably frightened. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I was so afraid I would be discovered, discredited, fired, no longer would have any credibility in the medical community. My experience in 1967 was so overwhelming to me, I denied the experience to everyone, even to myself." And I think one of the reasons for that was because he actually had missing time and later underwent regressive hypnosis and recalled being taken on board a UFO. As he says, they were not the typical kind of gray creatures. They were different. I don't know if that's a figment of my imagination or not. I don't know. They had huge heads, huge, with a very small body. The head had 4 definite wrinkles on the forehead. The eyes were wide open, literally. So this pushed Dr. Altshuler into the forefront of the cattle mutilation phenomena. In my book, I included a whole chapter on the cattle mutilations, a whole section, because Colorado is one of the hardest hit states in the United States, Colorado and New Mexico. There's a lot of controversy about the cattle mutilations and the other animal mutilations. There does appear to be government involvement. Some think it is actually solely government. Many of these mutilations have occurred where there are areas of nuclear fallout. So it could be that the ETs are studying the radiation from this. Could be they are harvesting genetic material because there are long strands of cattle DNA that are basically identical to humans. But other researchers do feel that this could be absolutely a government thing. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I'm not really an expert on the cattle mutilations. Christopher O'Brien has really dug deep into this, but this is something that's caused great concern at very high levels of government. There's been a lot of investigations into this. This has devastated the many ranchers who've had to deal with this. And that's why I wanted to include it in this list. I give it the number 3 case because this has been such a devastating, had such a devastating impact on the cattle industry in Colorado and is still ongoing. All right, now we get to the number 2 case. And the case I chose for number 2, I wonder if any of you can guess. I chose the, oops, sorry about this. Here's some more newspaper articles about the Snippy case. There's the actual skeleton of Snippy the horse. There was a big fight over who would get to keep the skeleton, but it's still on display as far as I know. You can go visit it.